What if everything feeling stuck right now isn't actually stuck at all? What if the silence you're experiencing, the strange pause where nothing seems to be moving forward, is actually the most important part of the entire process? Here's what nobody talks about. The quantum field doesn't prepare your desires first, it prepares you. And that preparation looks nothing like progress to a mind trained to measure movement. Right now, your system is recalibrating at a level so deep that your conscious mind can't track it. The urgency has softened. The goals that once consumed you feel distant. This isn't failure. This is frequency adjustment happening beneath everything you can see. And once this invisible restructuring completes, what arrives won't feel like a breakthrough. It will feel like it was always meant to be.
What's happening in your experience right now isn't a delay, even though every part of you might be interpreting it that way. It feels unfamiliar. It feels quiet. It feels unproductive in ways that make you question whether you're on the right path at all. But here's what's actually occurring. This is preparation. And recognizing the difference between delay and preparation determines whether you fight against this phase or allow it to complete what it started. Most people operate under the assumption that when nothing visible is happening, something must be wrong. The mind searches for evidence of progress, for signs that the work is paying off, for confirmation that the direction is correct. And when none of those markers appear, the default conclusion is that the process has stalled. But the quantum field operates differently than we've been conditioned to expect. It doesn't arrange external circumstances first and then invite you into them. It restructures the observer who will inhabit those circumstances. And that restructuring almost never resembles what we've been taught to recognize as forward momentum. This phase creates confusion because it strips away every signal you've relied on to feel secure. The urgency that used to fuel your days has dissolved. The goals that felt magnetically important just weeks or months ago no longer generate the same pull. You might even notice a subtle lack of interest in pursuing the things you were once absolutely certain would complete you. This isn't you losing your drive. This is your system recalibrating itself before something larger can stabilize within you. From a quantum lens, when you asked for change, you didn't activate a linear sequence of external events. You initiated a reorganization of probability itself. And probability doesn't collapse cleanly into physical form if your internal state is still configured for the past version of who you were. The field doesn't respond solely to what you want. It responds to coherence, and coherence requires internal restructuring before external results can manifest in a way that actually lasts. This is exactly why this phase often feels like absolutely nothing is happening. Even though everything is shifting beneath the surface you can perceive, your perception is transforming before your circumstances do. Your tolerance for noise, pressure, and unnecessary struggle is dissolving. The old rewards that used to satisfy you no longer register as meaningful. Not because you failed to achieve them, but because your system has evolved past recognizing them as valuable. Neuroscience actually supports this more directly than most people realize. Before a significant identity update occurs, the brain enters what researchers call a period of productive uncertainty. Dopamine-driven motivation decreases. Familiar behavioral patterns begin to lose their grip on your decision-making. This isn't system collapse. This is neurological flexibility. Your nervous system is loosening its grip on old predictions so it can begin encoding entirely new ones. And during that window of transition, the conscious mind interprets the neutrality as stagnation, even though it's actually the most fertile state possible for genuine transformation. Spiritually, what you're experiencing is the space that exists between identities. You don't feel like the person you were, but you're not yet anchored into the person you're becoming. That liminal state feels uncomfortable because it lacks the reference points your mind needs to feel oriented. There's nothing to chase toward and nothing to fix in this moment. And for a system that was conditioned to equate constant movement with safety, that kind of stillness can feel genuinely threatening. This is the exact point where most people interrupt the entire process. They mistake the silence for failure and attempt to force momentum back into the equation. They add more pressure, create new goals, repeat affirmations with increased intensity, or distract themselves with busy work, not understanding that they're actually pulling themselves back into the old frequency just as it was beginning to dissolve. The quantum field reads that interference with absolute clarity. It pauses, not as a form of punishment, but as precision. What you asked for isn't running late. It's waiting for you to become compatible with it. And compatibility isn't constructed through more effort. It's built through release, through letting go of the internal habits that would fracture the reality you're calling in if it arrived before you were ready. This is why preparation often feels like subtraction instead of addition. Less noise, less urgency, less emotional charge attached to outcomes. You're not being emptied because something is missing. You're being cleared because something new requires actual space to land. The field doesn't layer new realities on top of unstable identities. It waits for coherence to establish itself first. Trust becomes essential during this phase, not because you need blind faith in some abstract concept, but because the mind no longer has familiar evidence to lean on for reassurance. This is where control begins to loosen its grip and intuition starts to sharpen. You may notice that you're less reactive to circumstances, less invested in specific outcomes, and more aware of timing as a real factor. That's not detachment in the way we usually think of it. That's alignment, beginning to stabilize within you. If you're feeling disconnected from your old life, but not anxious about what comes next, you're not lost in the way the mind fears. You're being repositioned. The version of you that originally asked for this change cannot receive it while maintaining the same internal posture that generated the request. Something fundamental has to shift first. And that shift is already underway, even if you can't see it yet. Before we go further, I want to invite you into something that matters. If you're watching this, and something inside you is resonating, if you're starting to recognize your own experience in what's being shared here, hit that subscribe button and the bell icon next to it. This isn't just content, this is a frequency. And if you felt even a small shift while listening, you're already tuned in. Also, join our Manifestation Club on gogetter.au, where we explore these consciousness shifts together, share real stories, and support each other through these invisible transitions. This community is where transformation becomes embodied, not just understood. This phase isn't asking you to do more. It's asking you to stop interrupting what's already unfolding beneath the surface, to stop demanding proof before the internal adjustment completes itself. To recognize that preparation feels invisible only because it's happening at the level that actually determines everything else in your experience. What you asked for already exists as probability. And probability collapses into physical reality only when the observer is stable enough to recognize it as normal. Not exciting, not overwhelming, just normal. If you're here right now, feeling quiet but alert, detached but steady, less driven but more aware, this isn't the universe ignoring your request. It's the universe aligning you with precision. And once preparation finishes its work, what arrives won't feel dramatic at all. It will feel inevitable. The most challenging aspect of preparation is that it doesn't give the mind anything concrete to measure. There's no checklist you can complete, no milestone you can track, no external confirmation that announces you're on the correct path. And because the mind was trained to equate visible movement with actual progress, it interprets this phase as stagnation. But stagnation is rigid and fixed. What you're experiencing right now is fluid and alive. When the quantum field begins preparing you for what's next, It doesn't add more energy to your system. It removes interference. And removal feels empty to a system that has spent years identifying with effort, urgency, and emotional intensity as proof of existence. The silence you're experiencing isn't absence. It's space being created intentionally. This is exactly why preparation often feels like life is slowing down all around you. Conversations start to feel repetitive. Old goals suddenly seem strangely irrelevant. Situations that used to trigger intense emotional reactions no longer hook you in the same way they did before. It's not that you've become passive or apathetic. It's that your nervous system is no longer reacting from the survival patterns that used to define your entire identity. From a quantum standpoint, probability collapses into form only when internal noise decreases significantly. The field doesn't respond to chaotic, scattered signals. It responds to clarity. And clarity requires subtraction before any meaningful addition can occur. You cannot tune into a completely new frequency while still broadcasting fragments of the old one at the same time. Neuroscience explains this process as well. When the brain is preparing for a new identity structure, it temporarily suspends the old reward loops that kept you moving. Dopamine spikes decrease in frequency. The constant chase for the next achievement loses its appeal. This isn't depression in the clinical sense. It's disengagement from patterns that are no longer congruent with where your consciousness is moving. The brain is clearing bandwidth for something entirely different. This is why so many people describe this phase as feeling neutral, not happy, not sad, just quiet. And neutrality can be genuinely unsettling if you've spent most of your conscious life oscillating between intense desire and crushing frustration. But neutrality is actually where the deepest reorganization happens. It's where new internal predictions can form without being constantly overridden by old expectations that no longer serve you. Spiritually, this phase has been described across countless traditions as entering the void, crossing the desert, or wandering through the wilderness. Not because the experience is barren or empty, but because it strips away false orientation. You can't rely on the old compass anymore to tell you where you are, but the new compass hasn't fully calibrated itself yet. That liminal space forces presence in a way nothing else can. This is also where trust gets fundamentally misunderstood. Trust isn't believing that something good will eventually happen if you wait long enough. Trust is allowing the process to unfold without demanding reassurance at every single step along the way. And the universe tests this capacity not through introducing chaos, but through introducing stillness. It removes distractions and observes whether you rush to refill the space immediately. Many people do exactly that. They panic when they encounter the quiet. They return to overthinking, overplanning, overproducing, not because any of those activities are actually needed, but because the old identity feels unsafe without constant movement. And every single time they do that, they pull themselves back into the frequency that's actively trying to dissolve so something new can emerge. Preparation asks for restraint, not inactivity, but restraint from interference. It asks you to notice the exact moment when you're about to fill the space with noise, and then choose not to. This isn't discipline in the way we've traditionally understood it. It's maturity of awareness. In the comments, drop one word that captures the energy you're choosing to carry forward from this moment. Maybe it's alignment. Maybe it's ease. Maybe it's trust. Maybe it's something completely unique to your experience. Let that word be a small but powerful declaration, a signal you're sending not just into this space, but into the quantum field itself. Your word matters because your intention matters. The reason this phase feels invisible to your conscious awareness is because the changes are happening at the level that creates everything else in your experience. Your relationship with time itself is shifting. You're less rushed, less reactive to circumstances, more selective about where you place your attention. That shift alone changes outcomes dramatically. even before anything external rearranges itself in visible ways. You may also notice that your intuition sharpens during this period, not in some dramatic, mystical way, but in a practical, grounded way. You begin to sense when to move and when not to move. You stop forcing clarity to arrive. You let it emerge naturally. This is coherence forming within your system. And coherence is what the quantum field recognizes as genuine readiness. What's essential to understand here is that preparation doesn't feel good in the way motivation feels good. It feels stable. It feels grounded. It feels less emotional. And that lack of emotional charge can trick the mind into believing nothing important is actually happening. But the most significant shifts in consciousness rarely announce themselves with intense emotion. They integrate quietly. They feel obvious only when you look back in hindsight. If you're currently in this phase, your responsibility is not to accelerate it. Acceleration fractures coherence. Your responsibility is to stay present without trying to define what's coming next. To allow the old internal scaffolding to dismantle itself without rebuilding it prematurely out of fear or impatience. This is the part of the manifestation process that cannot be rushed, because it determines whether what eventually arrives will actually stay in your experience. The field isn't withholding anything from you. It's ensuring stability before collapse occurs. And once that stability is genuinely achieved, the shift doesn't require effort on your part. It requires recognition. You'll recognize it when it happens, because nothing inside you will argue with it anymore. That's how you know preparation has completed its work. What you asked for didn't fail to arrive because it was too large or impossible. It paused because the version of you who originally asked for it couldn't sustain it yet. That's the part most manifestation teachings conveniently skip over. Not every desire can land cleanly inside the same identity that created the desire in the first place. The quantum field doesn't deliver outcomes in isolation. It delivers entire states of being. And every state comes with a corresponding level of responsibility, perception, and internal regulation that must be present. If those elements aren't established yet, the field delays, not to deny you what you want, but to protect the coherence of the entire system. This is exactly why some manifestations arrive quickly and then collapse just as fast. The external reality shows up before the internal structure is ready to hold it without distorting. The nervous system becomes overwhelmed by the new information. Old coping strategies resurface automatically. The identity fractures under the weight of what it received, and the person assumes they lost what they manifested, when in truth, they simply outpaced their own integration process. What you're being prepared for right now is not just the thing you asked for. It's the version of yourself that can live inside that reality without destabilizing it. From a neurological perspective, this makes complete sense. The brain operates on prediction and familiarity. When something arrives that exceeds what the nervous system recognizes as normal, the system interprets it as a threat, even if the circumstance is objectively positive. This triggers self-sabotage, withdrawal, or attempts at over-control. The brain isn't trying to ruin your life. It's trying to preserve internal stability at all costs. That's exactly why preparation focuses on identity before outcome. The system must learn that the new reality is safe, sustainable, and familiar enough to maintain. And that learning doesn't happen through imagination alone. It happens through gradual internal recalibration, reduced urgency, increased presence, a softened relationship with control. Spiritually, this has always been understood as expansion of capacity. You don't simply receive what you want, you receive what you can hold. And holding something new requires releasing the structures that were built specifically to survive without it. This is where the process becomes genuinely uncomfortable, because what dissolves first is not your circumstances, but your self-concept. You start noticing that the version of you who needed to struggle prove yourself constantly, or anticipate the next obstacle no longer fits your experience. The old identity begins to feel heavy, outdated, and deeply misaligned. This is also why preparation often includes loss that doesn't look dramatic from the outside. You lose interest in things that used to consume you. You lose the urgency that used to drive your decisions. You lose the emotional charge that once fueled your ambition. And the mind panics because it interprets that loss as regression, but it's not regression at all. It's transition. You're shedding the emotional mechanics that kept you moving forward when coherence wasn't available yet. The field understands something. The mind actively resists. Effort was a bridge, not a final destination. The habits that helped you survive the old reality cannot be the same habits that sustain the new one. And until you stop relying on them completely, the shift remains incomplete. This is why patience becomes absolutely essential during this period. Not passive patience that waits for external rescue. Embodied patience, the ability to stay present without demanding immediate evidence. The ability to remain open without micromanaging the timing. The ability to trust that internal restructuring is not wasted time, but necessary sequencing that cannot be skipped. When the identity stabilizes completely, manifestation accelerates without any force being applied. Things don't arrive explosively, they align naturally. Opportunities feel obvious instead of miraculous. Decisions require less overthinking. You move at the right moment because your internal timing now matches the external timing perfectly. That's preparation completing itself. If you're feeling less desperate right now, less reactive to circumstances, less invested in controlling how things should unfold, that's not a sign you've stopped wanting what you asked for. It's a sign you're becoming compatible with it. The universe isn't asking you to want less. It's asking you to become more stable. And stability isn't built through increased effort. It's built through strategic release. What you ask for is not waiting on the other side of time. It's waiting on the other side of identity. And once that identity locks into place, nothing needs to be forced into existence. Reality recognizes you immediately. Trust is not what most people assume it is. It's not optimism about the future. It's not positive thinking overlaid on doubt. And it's definitely not pretending everything will work out perfectly. Trust at this level is structural. It's what remains when the compulsive need to interfere dissolves completely. The reason trust becomes so central right before a manifestation collapses into physical form is because interference is the last thing keeping the old identity alive. As long as you feel the persistent urge to check on progress, adjust the approach, rush the timing, or control the unfolding, part of you remains anchored to the version that doesn't fully believe reality can meet you without constant effort. From a quantum perspective, collapse happens when observation stabilizes, not when desire peaks, not when emotion intensifies to its maximum, but when the observer stops oscillating between belief and doubt. And oscillation almost always comes from doubt disguised as vigilance or responsibility. This is exactly why trust the universe feels like frustrating advice to people who are still operating inside survival-based identities. Because to a nervous system that learned safety through control, trust feels like danger. It feels like letting go of the only leverage you believe you have. But in truth, control was never leverage. It was compensation for a perceived lack of safety. Neuroscience makes this completely clear. When the brain perceives uncertainty, it increases prediction and monitoring activity. That creates mental noise, and noise disrupts coherence at every level. Trust, in contrast, signals safety to the nervous system. When the system relaxes its grip on constant surveillance, perception naturally widens. Timing improves without conscious effort. Decisions become cleaner. You don't miss opportunities anymore because you're no longer bracing against life itself. Spiritually, trust is the moment you stop negotiating with the future. You're no longer asking questions like, when will it happen? Or, am I doing this right? Those questions belong to an identity that believes alignment must be continuously earned through perfect behavior. The aligned identity doesn't ask those questions because it no longer doubts its fundamental compatibility with what it desires. This is why trust often feels boring to the mind. There's no emotional spike, no anticipation, no drama, just steadiness. And steadiness is exactly what allows reality to reorganize itself efficiently. The field responds to stable signals, not anxious ones broadcasting scattered frequencies. What most people don't realize is that impatience delays manifestation far more than doubt ever could. Impatience is a declaration that the present moment is insufficient. And that declaration keeps you oriented toward lack, even if everything else in your consciousness is aligned. The field hears that immediately and responds accordingly. Trust is not passive in nature, it's precise. It's the ability to remain internally consistent without external confirmation, to stay coherent without proof, to stop adjusting the signal just because nothing visible has happened yet in the physical world. Take a moment right now and drop a comment sharing one thing you truly want to manifest and why it's important to you. Be honest. Be real. This isn't just engagement. This is you, speaking your intention into the quantum field through this community. Your words matter. Your desire matters. And I'm giving away 2 one-on-one free sessions to help bring your manifestation to life. So comment now and let's make this real together. This is why the final phase of preparation often feels like active restraint. You feel the urge to act, explain yourself, or create movement, and you don't. Not because you're avoiding action entirely, but because action isn't actually required yet. Timing is required, and timing cannot be forced without fracturing the outcome before it fully forms. You may notice that when trust stabilizes within your system, synchronicity increases, but it increases quietly. Conversations land differently. Information arrives at the exact moment it becomes useful. Opportunities don't feel lucky. They feel obvious, like they were always there waiting for you to notice them. That's because your internal timing is now synchronized with the field's response mechanism. This is the last adjustment before collapse occurs, when you no longer ask reality to prove itself to you, when you stop watching the door and simply remain available for what fits naturally. And here's the paradox that most people miss entirely. The moment you truly trust, you stop caring whether the manifestation arrives today or 6 months from now. And that release of urgency is often exactly what allows it to arrive at all. Trust doesn't say, I hope this works. Trust says, I don't need to interfere with what's already unfolding. At that point, the old identity has nothing left to do. Its strategies no longer apply to your experience. Its fears no longer govern your decisions. And without resistance in the system, the field completes what it began, the exact moment you asked. If you're here right now, feeling calm without answers, steady without guarantees, and less concerned with timing than you used to be, this is not you giving up on your desires. This is you aligning so precisely that effort is no longer necessary. And when that happens, manifestation doesn't feel magical or supernatural. It feels natural because the only thing that was ever in the way was your own interference with the process. At this point in the journey, the preparation is no longer theoretical or conceptual. It's embodied. You don't need more understanding. You don't need more techniques. You need stability. The kind that doesn't fluctuate based on mood, timing, or external validation. This is where manifestation quietly completes itself. Not through action, but through alignment that no longer needs constant supervision. What you asked for was never waiting for the right conditions to appear outside of you. It was waiting for the internal environment to become coherent enough to receive it without distortion. That coherence isn't excitement. It isn't, certainty about every detail. It's neutrality combined with readiness, calm combined with availability. This is exactly why the final phase doesn't feel dramatic to experience. There's no emotional climax, no single moment where everything suddenly makes sense and clicks into place. Instead, there's a quiet internal click, a sense that you don't need to chase clarity anymore, that you don't need to rehearse the future or prepare for every possible outcome. You're simply here, present, responsive, and grounded in this moment. From a quantum perspective, this is when probability collapses cleanly into form, not because you demanded it, not because you applied the perfect technique, but because the observer stabilized completely. The field doesn't rush to impress you. It arranges reality efficiently when the signal becomes clear and consistent. Neuroscience mirrors this perfectly. When the nervous system exits hypervigilance and enters regulation, perception sharpens naturally. You notice opportunities without scanning for them constantly. You respond to circumstances instead of reacting to them. Decisions feel obvious instead of heavy with consequence. That's not luck. That's regulation, meeting, timing. Spiritually, this is receiving without grasping. You're no longer trying to manifest anything. You're allowing life to meet you exactly where you already are. And because there's no internal resistance left in your system, what arrives doesn't feel overwhelming or fragile. It feels sustainable. This is also where many people unintentionally sabotage themselves, not by doing something wrong, but by doubting the quiet. They expect manifestation to feel explosive and dramatic. When it feels subtle and natural, they assume they missed it entirely. But subtlety is the signature of genuine alignment. Loud changes belong to unstable systems. Stable shifts arrive softly. You don't need to announce that your life is changing. You don't need to prove to anyone that you're aligned. You don't need to explain what you're becoming. The less you interfere with the process, the faster reality completes the transition. If you're in this phase right now, the only thing asked of you is consistency, not effort. Consistency of presence, consistency of internal posture, consistency of trust without slipping into passivity. You move when movement feels clean and obvious. You wait when waiting feels neutral. You stop forcing meaning into every delay or setback. And this is where structure can genuinely support integration, not as a method to force manifestation, but as a way to remain coherent while reality reorganizes itself around you. That's why quantum rebirth exists. It was created specifically to help stabilize identity during these exact transitions, so you don't unconsciously revert to old patterns the moment things begin to move. Alongside it, the quantum grimoire serves as a practical companion, a space to observe, reflect, and anchor the internal shifts that are already happening without turning them into pressure or expectation. You'll find both linked in the pinned comment for whenever you feel ready to deepen this integration process. Nothing here is about chasing the universe. Nothing is about convincing it to respond to your demands. What you asked for is already responding. It's adjusting around the version of you that no longer interferes with its own unfolding. And when it arrives, it won't feel like a miracle. It will feel like recognition, like something that finally fits into place. Because the truth is simple, even if it took time to see it clearly. You were never being delayed. You were being prepared. And preparation is complete the exact moment you stop asking for proof that it's working. Make sure you share this video with your friends and family who might need to hear this message today. For you, it might feel like just sharing content, but for someone struggling to understand their own quiet phase, this could be the clarity they've been searching for. And remember, when you share value like this, you're not just helping others. You're reinforcing your own alignment. You're spreading the frequency of understanding, and that energy comes back to support your own manifestation journey. Be that person who shares breakthroughs, not just entertainment, Pass this on if you're ready to be part of this conscious community.